What's up minions, it's Climb Villain's Quest and today I'll be sharing with you all my thoughts on Serpent and Dove. So Serpent and Dove has been one of my most anticipated releases for the rest of the year and I've been very excited when it came out on the 3rd of September. So I've bought the ebook on that day and I've started reading it. I read the first 50% or so in just one evening, even though the next morning I had to get up at like 6:30 to go to university. But I did on my part. But you know, it was a very entertaining book. And I thought, you know what, since it's on so many people's TBR and it's one of the most anticipated releases of the year for some of you, I thought that I will do a full review on it since I finished it on September 4th or 5th, I don't remember, but yeah, I finished it very quickly. So, since I am French, if you haven't noticed, I've been very excited to read some French-inspired books that have been released this year, like Enchanté. I've been excited to read them, and I've read Enchanté in the beginning of the year. I think it came out in April or May. I've read it when it came out as well. And I was disappointed in it, not in the French sort of representation, but in the rest of the book. So I've been kind of hesitant to pick up more books taking place in France or inspired by French people or countries. But you know, Serpent and Dove, it has an interesting synopsis. It basically tells the story of a witch who is forced to marry a witch hunter, and that witch hunter doesn't know the actual identity of his new wife, and basically you don't need to know what comes after that. But if you're into the love to hate kind of relationship, if you want to know more about this book, I guess you should read it. Most of this review will be spoiler free. I will say when there's a tiny bit of a spoiler before there is one, I will alert you. Don't worry, I can't pronounce that word. There are so many words that I can pronounce, so you have to bear with me. But yeah, I have been very excited to read this, and I have, and I'm kind of disappointed, to be honest. I loved the first half of a book that I read on September 3rd. I was very excited. I thought that this was going to be one of my favorites of the year. I thought, you know what, maybe I was wrong about YA fantasy. Maybe this year isn't all bad. And then the second half happened and I was kind of proven wrong. Again. And again and again and again. I was left disappointed. What to do about it? I don't know. Maybe make a review. So here we are, and let's just get right into it. I think my intro was long enough. So we'll be dividing this review into two big parts. A will be the first half of a book, and the B part will be the second half of a book, because there is a very big difference between these two for me, and I wanted to make that very clear in my review as well. So A has number 1, characters. I still divide my reviews the same. Don't be surprised, we are going to start with the characters, and the best characters of all is Louise. Louise, she's sassy, snarky, and she leans against walls and doors in a very chaotic manner that I relate to, and I just loved that. I love that character so much. There were so many sentences that she said that were incredible and made me laugh and smile alone. Are you serious? And I thought, finally, a chaotic female character of interest. You know, finally we get a female character that isn't all gooey and cute and nice. And I like reading about cute and nice main characters, but I'm like, I want to see the hardcore. I want the sass and the snark and the bite. You know, I want the dark stuff. And I thought that Louise was that for me, and I really loved the person that she was in the first half of his book, because she just bullied the love interest around, and I just loved that. And she was basically like Klaus in the Umbrella Academy, if you watch it, and the love interest, well, Reed is more like Luther. There's not much to say about Reed. I think he didn't have much character, but I think it's also part of his personality to not really have one, because he was created by the church in a way, and his entire personality has been shaped by the Archvic, I don't know, the arch of some religious order. I don't know the name because I'm atheist, so don't know shit. But yeah, he's been shaped by the church basically, so he doesn't really have a personality, but I think it's one of his most enduring traits, even though it was really annoying most of the time. I thought it worked well with his persona, so I don't really have much to say against the characters on the first half of the book. Yay, a good point, finally. The number 2 comes the plot. The plot was incredibly tight as reads virgin ass. Yeah, I went there. Shouldn't have, but I went there. Yeah, there was some foreshadowing happening and some shenanigans as well, and it worked really well in the flow of the story. I was very into it. Some questions were questioned and then they were answered, and some were questioned and they were not answered yet. I was like, oh, I gotta know what's happening next. And I did know, and it wasn't that great. But yeah, the first half though of the plot, tight as hell, loved it. I read it in like 2 hours, it was 200 or so pages. I was having a blast. So number 3 is the writing style. I liked it. I thought it worked well with the story, even though it wasn't very unique. It didn't feel very immersive in any single way, but yeah, it just worked well, you know. There are types of writing that just work well with the story, and that's one. So I don't have any complaint on that part, but I actually do have a complaint though, now that I think of it. And that is, you know, this book is actually in dual POV, but first person dual POV. So I was expecting to get, I don't know, personality, a different train of thoughts coming from the characters, difference between the writing styles. I was expecting to know in which head I was going to be, but I didn't. Like when I was in the middle of chapter, I was like, wait a minute, who am I reading from, Reed or Louise? And I was just very confused about that sometimes. So that's the only weakness from the writing style. I think it could have been done better on that part, but that's kind of it. The world building, which is number 4, I didn't think that it made a lot of sense. I thought it was going to take place in France. It doesn't, but the royal family is named Lyon, which is the name for a big city in France as well. So it's just, is this taking place in Lyon, or is it taking place in an imaginary country inspired by France? And the royal family is the name of one of the biggest cities. And we have some French words here and there, and some French legends here and there as well. I was very confused as to what's happening. We don't get a lot of information on the world, we just know that it takes place in a city. And apparently the royal family rules this city, but we don't know if they rule other parts beyond the city. We don't even know if there are other parts beyond the city. We don't even know if there are other countries. We don't know what's happening. We just know that there's one royal family, a city, and a forest. That's it. So yeah, I think it could have been done better on that part. I was very confused. But also, I thought that the magic system and magic legends was well developed. It's kind of a lack of balance on that part. But at least, yeah, the magic was well developed. We had some legends, an explanation as to who, where, what, and where witches are from. And we know why witch hunters are fighting witches. And it's just, we know a bit about that. I think it's going to be more prominent in the second and third book of the series. I think there's going to be a third book, but I know there's going to be a second one. I think it's going to be more important. And if you've finished the book, then you know what I'm talking about, but I think it's going to play a huge part in the next installment in the series. So I'm very excited to see that. And now comes the second half of the book. The disappointing part, the part that made me cry in my soul out of despair, because I just wanted to love this book so much, and I didn't. The second half of this review will contain mild spoilers, but mostly for things that you know will happen just by the description. But yeah, just be aware. If you want to get into this book not knowing anything, I think this is where you should stop, because I'm going to give you some info. Not real spoilers, but some info on the story. I'm very confusing, I know, but there's a difference between information and spoilers, because information are things that you might have guessed and are not really gasp worthy, but spoilers is like knowing that Loki dies in the first 10 minutes of Infinity War. So yeah, the agonizing second half of the book. First, we're also going to start with the characters, because we are keeping the same order. I just want to make this review as clear as possible, even though I'm doing a bit of complicated plan. Is it really a plan? Because I'm kind of like prankstering that I don't have a plan, basically. My plan is to not have a plan. Once again, characters. I remember when I said that Louise was very snarky and sassy and she leaned against wall and she was very chaotic. Well, that just disappears. We're just going to erase the entire personality as you've read in the first half of the book, and we're going to turn her into the nice, gooey damsel in distress that you're used to read. Because why the fuck not? Like I said before, I don't have an issue with nice girls and nice protagonists. I'm not the one who likes to read about the other girls, the one who isn't like the other girls, you know, that's just makes me very angry. But I also don't like to read the same female character over and over again. I think that's hidden sexism, because I'm like, women aren't all soft, they don't all want to love interests, they don't all need to be saved. So yeah, I want to read something different, and I thought Louise was it for me. Second half of the book, she wasn't it for me. She turned very soft. I have a quote for you, actually 2 quotes. One from the first half of the book, which shows a bit about the sass that she has, and then the second half of the book, which shows that she's just completely different because she has fallen in love with Reed. So basically, she started with saying, "I am a criminal, I behave criminally, you should have known better." See, that's the kind of sass and just intelligence that I love in women. And she displayed that perfectly. But then the second quote happens. "I loved him deeply. Such love was not something of just the heart and mind." And that sounds more like a Juliet thing from Romeo and Juliet. That doesn't sound like a Louise thing. Disappointed. I just hate it when authors change the character's personality just because they're in love. Number 2, once again, is the plot. So like I mentioned before, the romance took a huge part of the story, even though I didn't really say so. I kind of meant it in the underlying message of my character part. So plot. Basically, 30% of the rest of the book is focused on romance, and then 10% is the resolution / finally moment, which is also partially romance. So the thing is, romance, I'm fine with it in a book. I think though that it should be sprinkled, like once a bit here, once a bit there, equally in the book, like once here on a chapter and once there on another chapter. I just think that's how it should work. But then you have the first half of the book, which is like very sassy and funny, with no real romance and interest from both parts. And then the second half happens and they're suddenly in love, and it's all very sweet stories, like I have to die so I can save them type of love. Not that it really happens, but yeah. It's the type of love that happens in the second half of the book out of nowhere, and it's just not even sprinkled a bit in the first half. So I found that kind of not okay, because I like my stories to be balanced. So the foreshadowing has been revealed and didn't impact the characters whatsoever. What's the point of the foreshadowing if it didn't impact the plot? I'm confused. Is it for shock value? But how is it supposed to impact the reader if it doesn't impact the characters? 3, the writing style is still the same. Entertaining, useful, not flowery, and not unique whatsoever. So, number 4, world building. So it got even more confusing because, like I mentioned it before, but there is a forest that appears, and I mean, doesn't magically appear, I don't think so. I mean, to me it did, because in the first half of the book, all I knew that there was a city and everything happened on the east end of the city. We don't know what's on the west end, and if there's a south end or a north end. You don't know. You just know that there's an east end in this city, and there's nothing else in this city. But basically there's a forest. So is the forest inside the city? Is it outside the city? Is it ruled by the king of Lyon? And if not, who is it ruled by? Or their neighboring countries? And it's just no explanation whatsoever on the fucking forest. I'm just so fucking confused. It's a forest, it's so huge that it takes them days to cross, apparently, and it's supposedly magic and haunted, but you don't really see anything that is haunted in this forest whatsoever. You're just like, oh, we're strolling through. That's all that fucking happens in the forest. I'm like, oh, it's haunted. I'm like, is it Mowgli again? At least in the Devouring Grave, the atmosphere in the forest, it was there, it was magical. You're like kind of spooked about it. Not in this one. Nothing happens in the forest. It's just there. So number 5 is my favorite point, and it is the villains with an S, plural, because we have some villain S to talk about today. Plural villains, but still one-dimensional villains. So for example, at one point there's this follower of a villain that's having a human conversation with the MC, and basically like next scene she has, wait, let me get it. Her eyes glowed manic and crazed beyond reason. That's an actual quote from someone who has been seen before in the scene before, like right before, having a human conversation with the main characters about her motivations. And 1, that's inconsistent, and 2, having a conversation about your motivation is already a poor proof of writing. If you have to tell us your motivations, then you're doing a poor job. I'm sorry. And I'm stumbling through my words. I'm always stumbling through my words. Just deal with it. I'm sorry. And basically the rest of the villains were just starving for power. There isn't anything giving them any substance, personality, and spank. Nothing. You just have to deal with, we are starving for power, we want to rule the world. I'm like, yeah, sure, that's fine. I like to be evil for being evil sometimes too. It's very fun to be mean after all. But at the same time, we all have ulterior motives, like real motivations. Why do they want power? Is it to feel some insecurity, some lack of sense of safety? Do they feel like they need power to feel happy? I just want to know what the motivation behind the need for power is, and we're not getting there. We're never going to get there, are we? But yeah, that's all I'm asking for, and I feel like I'm asking for way too much. So anyway, before I get further into this review, I think I'm going to end it there because I think this has gone long enough. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. Point is that the first half of this book had me hooked, and the second half had me, well, not hooked. I was disappointed, and yeah, I gave it 3 stars. So I'm going to end it there, and I don't have an outro, so bye.